Hi, I'm Brian Probalski, President of Molten Niguel Water District. On behalf of everyone here at Molten Niguel, I'd like to welcome you to today's landscape workshop. Today, Molten Niguel staff members will help you identify ways to use water efficiently, make water-wise landscape decisions, and find solutions to common landscaping problems. Planting native California plants, embracing a watershed approach, and removing grass delivers significant water savings. Here in Southern California, we see substantial fluctuations in the use of outdoor water between winter and summer months. Quite literally, during the hottest summer months, half of the water you use could disappear into thin air. Today, our staff will teach you how to stop that from happening. At Molten Niguel, we strive to be environmental stewards. In the early days of California's drought, we launched our turf replacement program to offer our customers an opportunity to replace grass lawns with beautiful, water-wise landscaping. The turf replacement program provided our customers with options that used less water and were better for the environment, while also lowering their water bills. When we launched that program in 2011, we could not have imagined just how successful it would be. Our agency alone accounted for 25% of all turf removed in Orange County. As of 2019, we've replaced more than 5 million square feet of turf, and in the process, conserved more than 500 million gallons of water. All of this hard work is paying off. Last year, we were honored with the state's highest environmental award due to our work to reduce pollution and protect our local watershed, creeks, and beaches from urban runoff. Your landscaping can make the difference in the amount of urban runoff that flows to our local waterways and ecosystems. All these actions aren't just protecting our environment, they're also reducing our water purchasing costs and saving our customers money. Again, thank you, because all this starts with you, our customers. We value the time you're sharing with us. We hope you enjoyed today's workshop and look forward to your feedback and ideas on future programs. Please reach out to our board or our staff anytime if we can be of further assistance.
Good morning and welcome to Molten Niguel's Landscape Workshop. I'm just gonna All right, good morning. My name is Elena and I just want to welcome you to Molten Niguel's Earth Day Landscape Workshop. I am a member of our water efficiency team, and today I am joined by my colleagues Luis and Lindsay. Lindsay you'll get to meet later on for part of the presentation. Today I'm going to get us going, and then we have a special presentation from Jody Cook. We'll finish up this morning with a walkthrough of our new virtual garden tour, and we'll have a cute question and answer session at the end. If this is your first Zoom webinar, if you've done Zoom but not Zoom webinar, it's just a little bit different. Your camera and your microphone are automatically disabled. If you're having any technical issues, there's a Q&A at the very bottom of your screen. You can just send us a message through there. That just comes to Molten Niguel staff. Luis will help you get sorted out there. You can also send us an email at conservation@mnwd.com with your phone number, and Luis can give you a call. Throughout the presentation, we really want to encourage you to ask questions. So use that Q&A feature to send us a question. Like I said, it just comes to us staff members. Some of them we will ask during the presentation. Some of them we're going to save till the end. So if you don't get an answer right away, don't worry. We're just saving it for the Q&A so we can have a better discussion about it. I'd like to thank our board this morning for supporting our customer education goals like this workshop. We serve drinking water, recycled water, and wastewater services to more than 170,000 customers across 6 cities, including the one you're living in today. Molten Niguel is focused on restoring our earth. We have replaced over 5.5 million square feet of turf grass just within our district. We've launched our NatureScape program back in 2017, and you're going to hear more about that today. We also have our H2O for HOAs program that brings together HOA property managers, board members, landscapers, all to help manage water efficiently in these large landscapes. We've partnered with the California Native Plant Society and other organizations to create the Calscape Nursery program. And you're going to hear more about that this afternoon or this morning too. But that gets labeled native plants into local nurseries where you can find them. Now, throughout the workshop today, to make it a little more fun and interesting, we'll be asking some poll questions. And you'll see the poll pop up on your screen and you can just answer really quick. And I'll just get it started off. So my first one, water, water everywhere. You know that saying, but how much of Earth's water do you think is fresh water that we can use to sustain ourselves, our gardens, and all the other species on the planet? So go ahead and choose one of those options on your screen, and then that will disappear and you'll see our presentation again. And I'll just give you guys a few moments to get that answered. With the polls, we'll gather all your answers and then we'll share them so everybody can see, but it's all anonymous and just for fun. All right, looks like we have quite a few responses, a few for 28%, some for 13%, some for 6%, some for less than 1%. In fact, only 2.5% of the Earth's water is fresh, non-saline water. And most of that is locked up in glaciers, ice caps, and deep underground where we can't even access it. Less than 1% is available to us through the atmosphere, lakes, and rivers where we can access it easily for drinking water. So you can understand why we're so passionate about taking care of water. A little bit about Earth Day. The first Earth Day was 51 years ago, April 22nd, 1970. And Senator Nelson of Wisconsin proposed a day when citizens across the country could host teach-ins to raise awareness, kind of like we're doing today, on environmental issues in their backyards, their states, their country, and the whole planet. 20 million Americans gathered on that very first Earth Day, a grassroots effort with no top-down organization. Congress established the Environmental Protection Agency later that year in December to tackle many of those environmental issues that people were getting so passionate about. The next decade saw a striking amount of public awareness, and landscape legislation was passed to help protect the environment, such as the Clean Water Act. And we still rely on the Clean Water Act today to regulate our drinking water. Now, we have plenty of challenges here locally. Cyclical and multi-decadal drought have always been the norm in California. However, our changing climate exacerbates these cycles. We have increased sea temperatures that make it harder for us to receive our monsoonal moisture that we rely on, and we get less snow and more rain late in the season. This hotter, drier weather makes it difficult for trees and other vegetation to survive until that next round of precipitation. And that gives us an increased risk and severity for wildfires. So as you know, last year was a record year for wildfires, and this year is not looking much better. Even right here in our service area, our creeks have impaired water quality from runoff, which contributes to lower water quality at our beach, which is what we really love about living so close to the ocean. We don't have any drinking water sources locally in our district. We don't have any groundwater that we pull from. We import all of our water from very far away areas, and those are also being impacted by these same challenges. But we also have many local solutions. Molten has updated our water shortage contingency plan, and that's available on our website. But we like to focus on helping our customers use water efficiently, because water efficiency is the California way of life, no matter whether we're in a drought or not. More than half of the water delivered in our district goes to landscaping. So today you're going to learn how your decisions can have a big impact. And this year's Earth Day theme is Restore Our Earth. And to make a global impact, we need to take local action. We need to make sure we nurture our soil. Storing carbon in the atmosphere in soils is a cost-effective and readily available climate solution that benefits our landscapes and our air, and is something you can do in your own yard. Reducing your consumption is always impactful. Less waste means less energy used. And think about reuse. Is throwing it away the best solution? Could you repair it, give it to a friend, donate it? Green waste in particular releases potent greenhouse gases, and you can compost in your yard to recycle those nutrients back into your soil instead. Recycling plastics can be hard. Wish cycling can clog up machinery. That's when we put things in the recycle bin that we're not really sure should actually go in there. They can ruin that process and make it very expensive for the recyclers to operate. Know your waste collector's abilities and check labels. Separate and clean your recyclables, and try to buy items with less packaging to begin with and repurpose where you can. We do want to do our parts to protect our parklands and wildlands that have been set aside. We have many beautiful trails and areas here in our district. Make sure you stay on the trails, pack it in, pack it out, and don't bring your dog if they aren't permitted. But get outside, get out there and enjoy our beautiful climate. Much of our ecosystem no longer functions as they're supposed to. So support organizations planting native species and removing invasive plants. Don't plant invasives in your own yard, and call out your HOA if they do. Native species are struggling in our beautiful biodiversity hotspot. Today, we'll talk about ways to welcome them into your landscape. And with that, I want to introduce our main speaker today, Jody Cook. We're so fortunate to have Jody here today. She's been teaching our workshops for over 6 years. Jody is a landscape designer and a horticultural expert. She specializes in sustainable landscapes, and she's a sustainable sites accredited professional through the US Green Building Council. So with that, I'll welcome Jody, and I'll let you share your presentation.
Thank you, Elena. That was a great introduction. I had forgotten that term, wish cycling. I was trying to remember it the other day, and it's such a great term, wish cycling. All right, I'm going to share my screen, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for coming today. So in honor of Earth Day, we have a different class. I'm a little curious to know how many of you have been to our regular class. And so if you've been to our regular workshop that we host on Saturdays, write yes or write no in the chat box. That way we can get, or the Q&A. That way we can get you used to using the Q&A, and also we can learn who is a repeat visitor and who is not. So just pop a yes or a no if you have taken this class before. So in honor of Earth Day, this is a condensed class. So the theme of this class, as the theme is of Earth Day this year, is Restore Our Earth. So we're going to use this as our starting point to dive a little deeper into how we can rethink our near nature, our local nature, the nature that surrounds us in our homes, in our communities, which ultimately ripples out to our region. It all starts at home. It starts at your home. And a wise person once said that we can't make a sustainable world without cities, towns, villages, and neighborhoods getting into the act. And so these places are made up of you and me. Our work to make a sustainable, watershed-friendly home landscape ripples out, and it will benefit in layers, humans and wildlife and ocean life. And we're going to talk a lot about that today. It'll lower our water use. We'll have more healthy, beautiful, resilient, water conserving communities. I promise you, and we're going to learn how to do all that right now. So our normal class, our typical workshop, which hopefully we will soon bring back to Molten Nagel's offices, and we'll all be able to meet in person, which is so much more fun, consists of 10 parts. And it's all based on this idea called the watershed approach to residential landscaping. And you're gonna, the opening video talked a little bit about that. Elena talked a little bit about that. And by the end of this session, you're gonna understand what it is and why it's important to think about our landscapes this way. We talk about this in more detail in our regular 3-hour workshop, which is fun when it's at Molten Nagel's offices. They give us nice treats and refreshments, so be sure to come when it starts up again. But our next one is May the 22nd, and it is online. So we are still Zooming our workshops for the near future, at least. And the next one's May 22nd. So go ahead and sign up for that one when you can. So in that one, we cover 10 steps and everything you need to know about the nuts and bolts of having this kind of watershed friendly landscape, whether you are a DIY gardener, whether you're a DIY person, you want to do it all yourself, whether you're a professional, contractors can use this information to inform themselves about sustainable landscaping, or whether you're going to hire a professional, which as a homeowner, you sometimes find yourself directing to do things the way that you want them done. So you can use all of the information in this class for those purposes. So we're going to talk about water, plants, soil health, turf replacement. But for this class, we've got 5 sections in store for you. First, we're going to talk about what the watershed approach is and how to use it in your garden. Next, we're going to look at efficient ways of watering your landscapes, and that may not quite be what you're thinking it is. So we're going to talk about new ways to think about watering the plants in your landscape. Then we're going to talk about the defining characteristics of our climate. What are the limiting characteristics, and what do we need to know to have a thriving home environment? What do we need to know about our landscapes and climate and soil and all of that in order to harness it to have beauty at our own home? Then your home is part of the larger garden that is our region. As Elena said, we are a designated biodiversity hotspot by Conservation International. And that may sound like a wonderful thing, but in fact, it's something that highlights the fact that our native environments here in Southwestern California are rare, unique. Many of them are vulnerable. Many of them are threatened because of development primarily and the way we've changed our landscapes. So being aware that your home garden is a way to restore those natural habitats is also what we're going to talk about later in this class. And finally, we are going to look at some of the new thinking about how gardens enrich us, our psyches and our psychology and even our immunity. So we're going to talk about restoring ourselves at the end. And then just before we exit for the day and start talking to Lindsay about programs, we're going to talk about we're going to have a bonus section. We're going to give you a plant list so that you can start thinking about ways to replace those plants that don't belong here with plants that do belong here and where to get them. All right, so let's jump right in. So the watershed approach, that's what we're going to talk about right now. And the watershed approach is a sort of bigger picture way of thinking about water in our region. There are 10 watersheds in Orange County. Most of you probably live in the Aliso Creek, San Juan Creek, or Salt Creek watersheds, depending on whether you're in Dana Point or Laguna Niguel. If you're near Oso Creek, that's part of the San Juan Creek watershed. But understanding watersheds is important to you in your home landscape because they define how water moves through our home landscapes, but also they define how water moves through our region, because each one of our landscapes at our homes has this micro effect, but it also has this macro effect. And we know this sort of intuitively, but we often don't think about it. So if we allow water to move one way in our landscapes, in our neighborhoods, we degrade our natural systems. But if we move it another way, we support our environment and we replenish our watershed health. And you have quite a lot of control over this in your own gardens. So a watershed is usually thought of a place where it's a large geographical area, and this picture is just sort of a snapshot of that, where water flows, it's bounded by ridges, water flows over it, it's kind of a natural funnel. And then that water kind of moves down through gravity through this funnel, and it goes down over land, sometimes through small creeks and rivers and streams. Some of it is deposited over land into the ocean, and some of it, before we developed our region, in fact, most of it was infiltrated through soil. And this is the thing that's important to note about this whole idea of thinking about our landscapes as watersheds, is that how that water moves once it hits the earth is critically important to our region. So whether it's irrigation water or whether it is rainwater, it is still water hitting our landscape. It still moves a certain way, and we have some control over that. So in the last 60 years or so, though, we have changed our relationship with water, and you're going to see how in a few minutes. When water falls on a natural watershed like this one, it slows down, it's filtered through soil, it's used by plants, it's deposited gently in the ocean. Most of the water in a natural watershed moves through soil and slowly makes its way to the ocean deep underground. Or it travels overland through creeks and streams that naturally and slowly meander, and sediment and some of the contaminants in water can then be pushed to the side, infiltrated through soil, and the soil will clean the water. So prior to development, most of the water infiltrated that way. Life in soil cleaned the pathogens and the pollutants out of it. Natural meandering creeks slowed the water. Now, this is what's happened now. We get our water at this point. For the most part, our drinking water comes, as Elena said, pretty much all of our drinking water comes from other people's watersheds, hundreds of miles and 4 states away, from the Colorado River and the Sierra Nevada mountains in Northern California through the State Water Project. We use that water for beneficial uses like drinking and irrigating crops, but we also waste a lot. And we are each in control of our own watersheds, as I just said. And the idea of a watershed is that it is scalable. So far, I've been talking about these large watersheds, Aliso Creek watershed and Colorado River watershed. But think of this small piece of what we call a parkway between your driveway or your sidewalk and the street, that little strip. Think of that as a watershed too. It's just a small scale watershed. It still has a top and a bottom. It still has ridges, and water flows over it or through it the same way that it does in the larger watershed. But this one's dysfunctional. And what this one produces, because most water flows over it, is it produces a situation where we have too much water in certain parts of the year. It produces a situation where the water, even in the dry times of the year, flows over land when it should be infiltrated. So in the last, I would say, 60 years or maybe even more, we've channelized all of our creeks and streams. We've created a lot of impermeable surfaces, and we've reversed this relationship with water and soil by not allowing water to infiltrate soil. So that's what we're going to talk about now, how to reverse this destructive water flow and turn it into something that benefits our community and that we can harness for our landscapes to reduce our reliance on imported water, keep that imported water for drinking, and find ways to create water within our own landscapes that is the rainwater that landscapes and plants actually love. So as sort of an aside, this is unusual where we live because Moulton-Niguel's water district, as you can see outlined here in red, it kind of lines up with our watershed. So where our water is deposited into the ocean in Moulton-Niguel's watershed, you have a lot of control over it because their service area is kind of bounded by the same ridges that bound Aliso Creek, San Juan Creek in many instances, and Salt Creek. So we're going to talk about how this has changed, and then we're going to go into how we can repair this. So this is a quickie time lapse of your neighborhoods. And it starts in 1984. And I want you to look at it. I've run it through twice because I think sometimes we look at our own landscapes and we know we should do certain things, but we don't really know why we're doing certain things. Maybe conceptually we know why, but we haven't actually seen the change because it's so slow. So I'm going to show you this change quickly over the last 40 years, and it runs through twice. And what I want you to look at, for those of you who are living in Aliso Viejo, In 1984, Aliso Viejo didn't exist. You can see it right here on the map. So pick a point and just look at how our area has changed. And what I want you to think about is how these areas that used to allow rainfall to move through soil have now become roads, parking lots, and roofs. And that water now flows overland to the ocean. And that's the thing that has had a big impact on our region. So take a look at this. You can look in the upper right of the screen and see whole areas of our foothills also that have now created a situation where water speeds up, it heats up, and it flows fast to the ocean, carrying with it literally everything we put on our landscapes. So this is the thing that we're trying to reverse engineer at our own home. This is a thing where we're trying to restore at our own homes. And here is how we do it. So when we allow that water to flow over land, over impervious surfaces, through our creeks, and out to the ocean, it has an impact that is negative to the ocean. And everything we put on our landscapes, pesticides, fertilizers, herbicides, powders, sprays, granules, fogs, whatever it is, ends up in the habitat of this little creature who has just recently returned to our shores, actually, after a 200-year absence. But when we start to rethink that relationship and we take water, we consciously keep it clean by slowing it down at the top of our watersheds, which is our roof, right? Our roof is the ridgeline on our home watershed. We contour our soil using rain gardens and swales and just simple, shallow contouring basins to infiltrate rainfall. We plant our gardens with plants, and that slows water down. Much of the water is held on the plants. It is funneled through the stems and the roots and the twigs into soil and held in the root zone of the plants. Remember, rainfall is much better for plants than municipal water. We need municipal water to have, the fluoride and chlorine and all the stuff that keeps it healthy for us, antibacterial properties. It has to have all of that to keep it healthy for us. But some of the things that are in our municipal water are not particularly healthy for plants because plants don't need this stuff. In fact, plant systems, as you find out in the longer class, the basis of the plant system is a bacterial soil system. So we need that. So we don't want to kill off the bacteria and the organisms in soil. And rainwater replenishes that. It has no salt, it has no chlorine, chloramine, fluoride, antibacterials. It has, it's pH neutral. So banking rainfall in this way in our soil is the best way to lower water use because our soil, not coincidentally, is usually in our region, it's a clay loam mix or clay. It's got a pretty significant portion of clay. Most of you probably know that. And because of that, one of the properties of clay is that it can hold water for long periods of time. So when we bank that water in our soil using some of these techniques of the watershed approach, our soil will slowly feed it back to plants over time. It will slowly clean it and infiltrate it by moving it through this natural filter. And when it finally arrives at the ocean, underground, through our aquifers, it arrives into this little guy's habitat clean. Oh, and just as an aside, since I don't think many people know this, but we have arguably the world's largest man-made kelp reef. It just finished in 2020 off of our shore between San Clemente and Newport Beach. And we have just started seeing in the last 5 years, the otters returning to this region. Now the otters, this little sea otter is the king of the kelp reef ecosystem, marine ecosystem. And having them back here means that all this work and all this money, $20 million went into making this, this reef. by keeping that I want to say linchpin. I think it's keystone species healthy in its own natural habitat is going to return our investment, really, because we're going to increase fish stocks and all sorts of other things. So anyway, there's good reasons to do this in your own yard and to try to keep that creature's ecosystem healthy, even if you didn't know about that, and even if that creature's far away from you. So here's how it looks in reality. Many of you most of you probably have gutters. If some of you don't have gutters, you can install them strategically on your roof so that you can start to capture that water from even a small portion of your roof and start to bring it into your soil. So this was taken, I think it was it might have been the year before last. It was pretty, I would say, over average rainfall when this video was taken. It's a brand new garden. As the garden grows in, it becomes less and less noticeable. But what I love about this video is that you can actually see how water has been slowed down this whole process. The purpose of it is to stop water from going to the street. And you can see that this intervention on this one little yard stopped the water from going to the street, infiltrated soil, and it will ultimately make a low water year in this landscape a high water year every year. And then eventually, a year or 2 or 3 or 5 later, when the garden grows in, the same principles apply. The same thing happens. You can see this garden has the gutter going to the rain chain, going to the swale. This garden has a path over it, and so that swale is bridged so that they can walk across it. But it's a natural, almost hidden part of the landscape, but it still performs like a watershed, and it has all the benefits of a watershed. Keep in mind also, there are other ways to add green to our landscapes and to open up our landscapes to rainfall, and that is to make paving permeable to water. It cools our landscape. It even offers a little bit of a habitat patch. We can grow vertical gardens or vines on hot walls to cool our houses or to grow food. And when water moves over the over paved surfaces, it arrives too warm. But when water moves over these cooler surfaces and infiltrate, it reaches the ocean cool. And that's important. All right, so we're going to move into talking about our climate and talking about plants, but in particular native plants. But one thing I have to tell you up front about native plants is that they have crazy names. There is no California Native Plant Marketing Board, although maybe there should be. And so be prepared that when you go out looking for California native plants, you are going to see some really interesting names. Some of them are so long that they take 10 minutes to say. Some of them just don't sound very appetizing. And we have a poll. What do you think is the worst name for a plant? And these are some plants that are actually quite beautiful. Bladderpod, the sadly and unromantically named bladderpod, beloved of hummingbirds, beautiful yellow flowers, extremely drought tolerant. Milkweed, the only plant that our threatened monarch butterfly can use for food, the only one. Deerweed, a pollinator plant extraordinaire. If you would like to save the bees, which our native bees are in trouble also, by the way, deerweed is what you plant. Tarweed. I have no idea why it's called tarweed. I'm guessing it must have some kind of turpentine-like smell. Guadalupe Island rock daisy, lovely plant. Or San Diego poverty weed. Which do you think is the worst possible plant name that you would question if you were going to buy this plant? Go ahead and pop your answer in.
I think poverty weed must be the worst one.
You know, I have my pet peeve is bladderpod, I have to say.
I did buy a bladderpod just for the name.
It's totally aptly named when you see the plant because it's got these little kind of bundles, but it's such a beautiful plant. I think I might even have a picture of it later on. What did everybody say, Elena? Oh
Waterfog
yeah, see, I'm
winds.
with you. I'm with you, people. But yes, San Diego poverty weed. If you have a slope, especially you Mission Viejo people, if you have a slope that you are trying to hold down, there is nothing that can beat San Diego poverty weed for holding a slope down. Evergreen, low, nice dense root system. Hold your slope with that plant. All right, so what do we need to know about our climate to restore our garden? Our goal is to create a garden that restores our environment rather than being one that releases a lot of greenhouse gases or contributes to water and air pollution. So how do we do that? It begins in our gardens. Be creative. Think outside the box. Please do not be afraid to be the first one on your block to remove your lawn. Add a new kind of green. The greener, the better. Although you'll notice many of our plants are silver, and there's a good reason for that. Silver plants reflect the sun, reflect the heat, and they are extremely thrifty with water. So don't be worried about putting a silver plant in. That's almost a guarantee in a sunny location that you will have a low water plant. Look for ways to reduce impermeable surfaces. Remember, we looked at that earlier on. The gardens that you see here are all fully native plants. The one in the lower left used to be a very high water lawn, but now this homeowner waters every 21 days by hand. They found that they had to shut off their irrigation system because it was automatically watering it too much, and the plants were starting to get waterlogged. So they go out there with their coffee and a hose every 21 days and give it a little sprinkle. The upper garden is a commercial site. Keep in mind, these ideas apply to businesses and HOAs also. And plant native. There's really no good reason to have lawn in a parkway, which is that little area between the sideway and the road. In fact, many municipalities and even some HOAs are no longer allowing it because there's really only one way to irrigate lawn in a parkway, and that is with spray irrigation, which is very wasteful because spray is not designed to irrigate small areas, and so much of it gets kind of blown around or runs down the street. So instead, swap it out for plants. We can have a planted parking strip. We can provide a walking path across it by using some kind of permeable hardscape like stepping stones or a crushed gravel path or even a mulch path. We can hand water it, or we can irrigate it using inline drip tubing, which I'm going to show you in a moment. But when we make this one switch, if that's all you can do is make that one switch, we will have eliminated one of the biggest sources of dry weather, dirty runoff in our watersheds. So if that's all you can do, go ahead and do it. One important way to reduce water waste is to rethink our irrigation practices. Keep in mind, with native plants, you can hand water to establish them, and you can hand water them once they're established. It is not difficult. So if you have an irrigation system that you think is going to be incredibly expensive to overhaul, and you have a relatively small yard, plant native plants, hand water every once in a while, and you will be fine. Molten Miguel has a whole class coming up on irrigation. So look for information on this. We can retrofit our spray irrigation, particularly in narrow areas that are less than 7 feet wide, to inline drip, which is just this narrow tubing. It's maybe 3/4 of an inch wide. It has little dripper holes every foot or every 18 inches. And this avoids completely the problem of overspray because traditional irrigation, as I said, can't efficiently water small spaces, but inline drip is 90% efficient. Now, it's not the answer for large areas, but for areas about 7 feet or less, like this picture in the center, it is an excellent choice if you're retrofitting your irrigation. For larger areas, though, anything larger than 7 feet, we should either water by hand again or use rotating nozzles. Rotating nozzles deliver water most like rainfall at a rate that our landscapes and our soil can absorb without it running off. You'll learn more about this also in the upcoming irrigation workshop. So I'm curious about your garden though. Who do you garden for? Who is your garden for? It's for you, obviously, and hopefully not for your gardener, but it's for you and who? Who is your garden for?
I'm sure we all have different things that we like to focus on when we do our gardening.
Do you know what, Elena? My garden is, now that I have a dog, we got a pandemic dog. And now that we have our COVID dog who we adore, our garden has kind of become her garden. I didn't expect that to happen. She lies on the grasses. She loves it.
That's true. I forgot to put dogs in there.
Yeah. So let's just include it with kids. My kids, grandkids, or dogs.
My dog loves smelling my native plants because they all smell different.
Fun.
All right, let's see what everybody said. Oh, lots of birds and butterflies.
Yay! You're my peeps. My HOA. Yes, well, we do have to please the HOA. You know what? There are ways to do that. There are strategies to do that. Yeah, so we'll look at that after. All right, good job. Thanks, everybody. All right, so the other thing to keep in mind is that over the time that we've altered our ecosystems here in South Orange County, we have altered the habitat of other creatures that live with us and amongst us. And sometimes we've pushed them farther out. But these species in our region evolved in coastal regions. They want to live by the beach just like we do. They can't live inland. They have to live here. So how do we solve this problem? How do we bring them back? Restoring your yard means restoring their homes also. People aren't used to thinking about our native flora and fauna as being special, but it is. In a global context, our native plants and wildlife are as rare as plants and wildlife in the rainforest or in Australia or in Africa. We're used to thinking about, kangaroos or pandas or parrots as being wild and rare and exotic, but we have our own unique, wild, rare, exotic plants and animals that don't exist anywhere on Earth. And some of them are in trouble. We are on the Pacific Flyway, a major bird migration route. They need our gardens to fuel them in their travels, especially since so much of their habitat has been removed with the fire seasons becoming longer and hotter and more destructive. They need us to refrain from tree trimming when they're nesting in February to August. They need us to stop spraying pesticides. Did you know that California houses is home to 1,600 of the continent's 2,500 native bee species? Because we have so many flowering plants and such a long succession of bloom in California, there is something blooming virtually year-round in California. And our native bees are in trouble. Some are even in danger of extinction. And remember, our native bees, they don't swarm, they don't hive, they don't sting, they don't mostly care about you, and they cause very few problems, if any problems. They are important food pollinators. They're solitary, they make nests in one tiny hole in the ground, often some back quiet part of your yard. You won't even know they're there. They can't nest in lawn, and they can't survive pesticides or sprays. A recent study also showed that hummingbirds are harmed by the same pesticides as bees are, which makes sense. So there's no good reason to use pesticides at your home. Birds too are important helpers in our garden. Are you irritated by grubs living in your soil? The California thrasher on the bottom right is here to help. She'll pull up those high protein snacks, which are larvae and caterpillar to you and me, from your soil and your garden, and she'll feed them to her young to reproduce that next generation. And we're removing their habitat. Once common birds like this one, this is a native southwestern common bird, is now finding that its habitat is being removed. That's something we can especially help in our HOAs, our larger landscapes, our common areas. Anybody that bounds up to one of the wildland areas, you can help these thrashers not decrease in numbers. Give them a few native plants, give them a little bit of fresh water. They will keep your yard pest free. They're great at this. This little blue butterfly, or this is deerweed, by the way. This butterfly is on deerweed, that yellow plant. this California lilac. These are all native plants that our wild nature can use and has evolved to use for millions of years. Likewise, the monarch butterfly, plant milkweed. If you want to save them, we are on the monarch migration route. We are actually an overwintering home to many monarchs. So plant milkweed, our native milkweed in your yard, will help them to fuel their journey and to overwinter and to reproduce. If you want more information on this, and something you can give to your HOAs, actually, the Sea and Sage Audubon Society is Orange County's chapter of Audubon, and they have a great guide on tree trimming, which, you know, HOAs are notorious for tree trimming when they want a tree trim. Never top a tree, and never trim your trees between February and August. Go ahead and pull this off the web and you can give that to your HOA. And while we're at it, let's restore our community and remove pollution, toxins, noise, and gas-powered garden equipment, and herbicides and pesticides and all the stuff that comes with it. We will reap great rewards when we do this. All these pieces of equipment are now available as quieter, non-polluting electric versions that have scaled up in the past few years for commercial uses. You can even, if your HOA or your gardener is balking at making that switch, you can look up the incentives that are now given to help them pay to make the switch. So the Air Quality Board is helping make the switch to electric lawn care equipment by providing incentives so that they can make that change. Demand it in your HOA and community to drive this transition. It's happening in other places, and it will make a dramatic difference to restore our quality of life here at home. And finally, when we restore the earth in our own yards, we restore ourselves. A body of research has been developing over the last 20 years or so, showing how nature helps human beings manage stress, live a healthy childhood, develop resilient immune systems, heal faster from illness, and just really withstand the stresses of our modern environment more effectively. It makes us more resilient. Did you know that levels of the stress hormone cortisol drop within 30 seconds of being in a garden? The kind of attention we give to nature, especially in our own yards, is the kind of attention that calms our minds and our psyches. The closer that experience is to us physically, the better, because we need nature every day to help us restore calm and perspective in our frenetic world. So this graph shows kind of a food pyramid for a nature diet. You'll recall the food pyramid where we have the staples that we need every day for health on the bottom and the once in a while treats at the top. Well, nature's kind of like that too. We can create our own daily nature diet in our own yards by doing all of the things we've talked about today. Have fun in your garden, express yourself, cultivate what you find inspiring and beautiful. Make your yard a place that feels like you. Put a chair down, sit and watch the life that's around us. Nourish yourself. There are lots of low water herbs and different ways of growing vegetables and fruits and edible plants in a way that is water conserving and water efficient. Even one tomato can refresh you, give you fresh produce that's a joy to pick and use. Grow your plants from cuttings, grow your plants from seed. And be in your garden, look at it, see the abundance and joy that a thriving garden can bring. And share it. Share it with nature, share it with your friends, share it with wildlife. So this is how we restore Earth at home. And that's the 5 steps that you'll get more in-depth information about if you come to our workshop on the 22nd. But now we're going to do the bonus section, which is plant this, not that. So instead of planting hydrangeas on the right, which we all acknowledge are beautiful, particularly when they're grown in a climate that gets I don't know, 50, 60 inches of rain a year, not our 10 inches of rain. But look at our California lilac. It thrives on the rainfall we receive from nature. It supports our local butterflies. A number of them are vulnerable to extinction, and the hydrangea can't do that. And it looks absolutely lovely in bloom. This one was chosen. There's a lot of different ones, by the way. There's tree form California lilacs, there's ground covers. This one is about a 5-foot low growing shrub. So it requires virtually no maintenance. Another way to reduce all that noise and disruption in our communities.
And Jody,
Yep.
are the California lilacs, are they allergy friendly?
Do you know, that is a great question. I will look that up. There is a book for people who have allergies. Did someone ask that question, Elena?
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm going to do? I'll tell you right now what the name of the book is. Boy, I wish I could walk to my bookshelf. It's called The Allergy-Free Garden. I will pop that name in the chat or in the Q&A afterwards. The Allergy-Free Garden. There's so many issues around allergies and plants. Many of our native plants are allergy free. And the reason for that is because it's a little bit complicated, but it's the way the pollen is kind of released to soil or released to the air. Many of our plants that are cultivated that are non-native are high allergen producers because most of them are males and they produce a lot of pollen. Male olives, male podocarpus, male acacias. There's so many of them, I can't even tell you. Great, great question, whoever asked that.
And I do want to just let people know that we're going to be sending a link to all of these plant names with links to the CalScape website where they can learn more about them. So just listen to Jody. You don't need to scribble all of this down.
Yeah,
She's got lots of good information.
So on the right, Cape honeysuckle from Africa, Cape. And it is, they used to have this great page on the Orange County Vector website that showed all the plants that you should not plant because they attract rats. And honeysuckle was on there, Cape honeysuckle. And so don't fill your slopes with Cape honeysuckle. Instead, use our native island bush snapdragon, native right here to our region. It's a great hummingbird plant, by the way, too. And for those of you who are addicted to interesting foliage like I am, you can't always just have flowers, flowers, flowers. It's really nice to offer some contrast with foliage. A lot of people plant this Dusty Miller, which is from Africa, but look at our Catalina silver lace. It used to be rare and endangered because there were goats on Catalina Island that were eating it all, but they took the goats away and now it's starting to recover. It is a great garden plant. The picture on the left is that plant in my garden, and it's perfect for our climate. Very low water plant. Also, think about hedges. We're so used to thinking about this Indian hawthorn in the bottom as the only option for us, but look at this beautiful manzanita hedge on the top. We have many manzanitas that, again, they're a lot like the California lilacs. They range from flat to trees, everything in between, many, many different cultivars for whatever purpose you would have. And then if you have the Mexican feathergrass on the right, please remove it. We can start thinking about Mexican feathergrass as kindling, because when it dries and those seed pods start to blow around, it honestly looks like something you used as kindling in Boy Scouts. It's not a good plant as our fire issues are increasing. But instead, plant our native purple 3-on. If you ever go hiking, you'll probably encounter this really pretty grass out there on our slopes, and that's our native purple 3-on grass. Has that same kind of beautiful flowy look without all the hazards of the Mexican feathergrass. And then if you want a short hedge, instead of growing boxwood, where nothing really can use it for any purposes at all. In fact, in our region, there's a blight that's taking out a lot of the boxwood, which is native to Korea and Japan, China. But use our dwarf form of our native coyote bush, which is called pigeon point. And you can turn that into a little hedge if you need one. And then remove vinca. Vinca is a plant on the right-hand side that is choking out our native waterways. It's the kind of plant that's sort of the gift that keeps on giving. It's very difficult to get rid of it once you've planted it. So just don't plant it. Instead, plant our native strawberry. You can see it planted here with our native blue fescue grass. And then instead of planting ivy, there are so many ground cover manzanitas. This is a little manzanita called emerald carpet. Perfect for our parkway areas and not an invasive plant. And then instead of the pretty ubiquitous fortnight lily from Africa, try planting our native Douglas iris instead. Ground cover roses. Sadly, as we've continued to cultivate the rose, we've bred out many of its benefits. They no longer have much fragrance. They no longer support all that many species, not that they ever really did. Our native yarrows come in red and white and pink, and they offer a great flower form for pollinators and butterflies. So replace your rose with that instead. And then if you love flowers, take out your African daisy and put in our native seaside daisy. If you need a narrow upright tree, remove your Brisbane box, which we see going up literally everywhere, aside of freeways and all over the place, and replace it with our native Catalina ironwood. Beautifully fragrant foliage, very similar upright narrow form, just a beautiful plant. And then if you have the room, take out your rusty fig, or just don't plant one, and plant instead our rare and endangered or vulnerable. Actually, I think it is actually officially endangered now, our Engelmann oak. This was Orange County's oak. This is endemic to our region, and it has been removed through all sorts of mostly development, but start to build it back in. It supports so many species in our region. So plant the Engelmann oak, remove your rusty fig, and those are just a few ideas of the ways we can start to transition our native landscapes back to where they belong here in Southern California. So that's it for me. Thank you so much for your time and attention, and I will pop this class back to Elena and Lindsay. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much, Jody. I hope everyone really enjoyed that presentation. Like Jody said, that is a kind of a short condensed version of our regular landscape workshop. Our next one is May 22nd. So if you found something really good in there, I encourage you to come for our regular landscape workshop where we get to do a bit deeper dive on some of these topics. Next, I'm going to introduce Lindsay Stuvik. She's going to come on and she's going to walk you through a couple of our new things that we have issued on our website. We have our NatureScape garden tour and our CalScape nursery program. So she's going to show you a little bit more about those. I am still gathering questions for the Q&A, which we'll do right after that. So be sure to pop those questions in the Q&A. I've already got several saved so we can go back and ask Jody some more detailed questions. And if you have any questions about what Lindsay's covering, do that, put that in the Q&A as well. And I do want to encourage you, when the workshop finishes pretty shortly, there's going to be a link to our survey. We'll also send the survey in the email with the handouts for the workshop. So if we would just really appreciate your feedback on the workshop, make sure you fill that survey out for us either today or tomorrow so we can continue to bring this great programming to you. So with that, I'll introduce Lindsay Stuvik.
Hello, good morning, everybody. Thank you, Elena. My name is Lindsay. As Elena mentioned, I manage the water efficiency department here. And to Elena's point, I would just love to get all of your feedback on today's workshop. We really value our customer feedback. It helps drive a lot of our program development and it helps drive our workshop development. So if there's anything that you found really interesting today or that you think your neighbors would enjoy or need to know about or want to know about, please feel free to include that because we're developing this content for you. And we're happy to develop more if you have interest there. So thanks again for joining us. I've got about 10 minutes and I want to make sure that I get through all this material. So I'm going to share my screen now and we'll go ahead and get started. So the district has been offering turf removal programming for the last 10 years. And we've had, I think as you heard in the introductory video, we've removed over 5.5 million square feet of turf in our service area and replaced it with some type of drought tolerant landscaping. Just want to make sure you can see my screen. Elena, are we good?
You are good to go.
Okay. And so over time, what we've realized is that, we've done these classes. We've had about 3,000 of our residents attend our workshops, and we've heard a lot of really great feedback. And some of the things that we've heard is that, customers want this process to be easy. We've heard that you're having a hard time finding California native plants. If you were to go to your local nursery today, you may be challenged to even find one native plant available for purchase. And if there were native plants, they're hard to identify. And so what we wanted to do was create a program, one that kind of dispels a lot of the myths around natives. I think a lot of people, when they think of what could a native plant or landscape look like, they think of rocks and cactus, when really there's a huge array of floral plants out there. And I know we all like beautiful flowers, and so do our pollinators. And so what we wanted to do was create a program like NatureScape. It's basically our DIY turf removal program that we have converted to a direct install program just to make it easier for customers to participate. But what you'll see here are examples of our NatureScape program, which we started back in 2017. It's been great. We've put in almost 100 of these landscapes now in our service area. They're doing their part, contributing to building biodiversity and reducing urban runoff. And we put together a NatureScape garden tour just to showcase what these looked like back in 2019. And we had 500 people attend this garden tour. They drove to 8 different landscapes all across our service area, from Dana Point to Mission Viejo, to see what these landscapes looked like. And we got a lot of great feedback. And we were hoping to do the same thing last year, but as you know, COVID-19 interrupted some of those processes. So what we did is we took our NatureScape garden tour and went virtual with it. So what you're going to see here is how to find our NatureScape garden tour and a lot of the features that are available on it. We're also going to introduce you to the calscape.org website. It's a website that's basically an online native plant database that's overseen by the California Native Plant Society, which is a nonprofit, and how to basically find plants that are native to your service area, or our service area, our region in general, where to buy them, and how to install them. So let's get started. Right now, I'm on the district's main page. If you were to go to our conservation tab, you could click on the NatureScape garden tour. And I think it's really interesting. When we first started this program, this was back in 2017, we could not find pictures of what a native landscape looked like. We searched high and low. We actually had to find a photographer in Northern California to purchase a picture of a California native landscape. And just through this program, NatureScape alone, of having installed, almost 100 of these landscapes, now we have a great database and a library that you can look through, and it really is truly a unique resource. I think you can find a lot of close-up shots of individual native plants, but not ones that actually are put together in an orchestration of a landscape. And so just to orient you to the tour, you can start it immediately if you get here, or if you were to scroll through, you can watch a short video on what you're going to see in the tour. These are what we call our NatureScape neighbors. These are the folks in our communities that have been really the trailblazers. They've taken out their turf and they've put in these watershed-friendly California native plant landscapes, and are starting to, home by home, garden by garden, build biodiversity or rebuild biodiversity across our region. And if you scroll to the bottom, you can also see more information about our landscape workshops. Again, we mentioned we have a full-length landscape workshop. We have an irrigation workshop, and we'd be happy to offer more. Again, we need your feedback of what you want to hear about. We have a NatureScape program. That's what I just mentioned. It provides you with a free site assessment. The district pays for half of all of your design costs. And in addition to that, we offer a $2 per square foot incentive toward all of your costs for your landscape design, your landscape retrofit, including the turf removal portion. And if you wanted to see how that what that would cost, you can go to our rebate calculator, which is this section here. Put in the square footage of your landscape, as well as the size of retrofit that you want to do, and you can see what those costs will be. Or you could just call us and we can chat with you about your landscape and the different options that you have. So I want to get started. Here is the very first home on our tour. This is the Gustafsons. We really appreciate all of our NatureScape neighbors and the fact that they have been kind enough to let us take photos and videos of their landscape and really make it available to all of our customers to see. And so what you'll see in here is we've got a great before and after photo. There's a gallery of all of the after photos, so you can see up close and from a wider perspective what some of these landscapes look like. And as you scroll through, we've got some great quotes from either our homeowners or from Jody Cook, who's actually the designer and the project manager for NatureScape. And so if you enjoyed Jody's presentation, and she's excellent at what she does, very knowledgeable about all things sustainability, but especially landscaping. You could work with her in the NatureScape program. And if you keep scrolling down, we incorporated this interactive section because I think a lot of times you're looking at a photo, you wonder, well, what is that? I wonder where I can find more information on it. And so we pulled out some very specific photos and added some information here. And then if you scroll down to the very bottom, you can see the entire design in color, and even click on it, it'll download as a PDF, and you can zoom in and learn more about how these landscapes are designed. And then finally, again, at the bottom, if you wanted to learn more about the NatureScape program or our workshops, you could sign up here. Or if you're looking into, or if you want to find native plants, you can put your address in here and find all the plants that are native to your region. So let me scroll back up. We'll do a little deeper dive. I know I don't have much time and I'll be quick, but there's just a few things I wanted to show you. So here is our before and after photo. As you can see, the Gustafsons, they love to recreate in their garden. We really encourage folks that once you do the conversion, make it a place that you can enjoy. Like Jody said, gardening is not just about restoring the landscape, but it's about restoring yourself. And it's something that you can use on a daily basis and have your own space to enjoy nature. And so if you were to click on our gallery here, you could get some up close photos of what some of these really beautiful plants look like. Again, not a cactus, beautiful floral plants that our pollinators love and enjoy. And then every one of our NatureScape landscapes gets this wonderful native plants live here sign that you can choose to install in your front yard. But it's really great to let folks know who are passing by, what kind of plants are in the landscape. And we get a lot of people that just call us after having seen this sign because they want to learn more about native plants. But again, no rocks and cactus. This is actually a red buckwheat, a really beautiful plant. Adds a lot of color to the garden, and is again a big fan of butterflies are a big fan. So I'll just scroll through. We've got, again, this is Mr. Gustafson has provided this really wonderful quote. They get a lot of just passerbys who are interested in the landscape and ask a lot of questions about it. But what I also wanted to introduce you to was this interactive element and calscape.org, which is an online native plant database. And so what we've got right here, you see here, we've got a Dudleya. And if you were to hover over, you can learn a little bit more about the Dudleya family. That's actually one of the succulents one of the few succulent families that are actually native to California. And if you were to click here, it's going to take you to calscape.org. And this is where you can see like the native range of any of the plants that you find interesting. You can see additional photos of what these plants look like. Get additional information, the different butterflies and moths that are actually call this plant either a host plant or use this plant for some type of food source. Once you get on calscape.org, I really encourage you to look around. You can enter really any plant here and search it by name, but I'll show you my favorite feature of this. And it's basically, if you go to the Calscape main page, you can put in your address and find all of the plants that are native to you and even local nurseries that carry it. And so I'll go ahead and put in the old address because it's the only one that I can remember right now for the district, Laguna Niguel, and that's California. So we'll go ahead and put that address in. and we'll see there are 567 plants that are native to this region, anything from perennials to grasses. They've even got it categorized as very easy. Let's click on that because that's more my style. These are the plants considered very easy to grow in our native location. I actually just installed 3 of these in my front yard, so we're going to go ahead and click on California fuchsia. And from here, again, you can find out more about these plants, the region that they grow, see some really beautiful pictures. And this is my favorite feature. This is something that the district has worked quite some time on with our CalScape nursery program. We're really looking to help connect our customers to these plants and get more of these plants into our local nurseries. So that way customers can find them and bring them home and actually install them. So if you were to click on this feature down here, there's 58 nurseries in California that carry the California fuchsia. And you can see, you can scroll down here and actually see if there's a nursery near you. I'll just look at South Orange County in general. So here we've got at least one nursery nearby that carries it. But if you needed to, maybe if you found a plant that wasn't carried nearby, you could always click at something that's in the region and call them and see if you can order it locally. All of the all of the nurseries that carry these have been kind enough to actually create a nursery page on calscape.org, so you can go in and find their whole inventory. So if there was something else that you wanted to order or visit the nursery and see, you can go in here and check out their inventory. And so again, the district's working on our CalScape nursery program to help customers be able to access those kind of resources. And if you're interested in CalScape, please let us know. It's something that it takes a village. We've got 15 other water agencies as well as Metropolitan Water District that have helped to put this program together. And it takes all of us really promoting and supporting these plants and educating on them to get them into our local nurseries. And it takes you as well. If you're interested in these plants and you go to your local nursery and they just don't have any, ask why. Or direct them to us, and we can get them connected to the CalScape program so they can start carrying more native plants. So the last thing that I wanted to share that's part of our online NatureScape garden tour, besides a lot of really beautiful pictures and examples of these landscapes, is you can actually see the design plan that that goes into making these landscapes. And if you participate in NatureScape, this is the actual design that you'll get through NatureScape, not this yard, obviously, but this is the feature or the features of the design. What you'll see is a really great illustration of what a swale looks like, an example or a great description of its purpose and what it does to actually capture water, slow it down, spread it into the soil, and really turn your landscape into a reservoir of water for your plants later in the year when we don't tend to get rain. We've got a lot of great pictures of our natives that will be installed into the landscape. And NatureScape is a front yard first program. So you can see we've got a front yard done on this particular one, but you can also do your backyard and your side yard. It's a great way to explore all the different variations that are offered through the program, as well as some of the really neat ways to add personality to your garden. You saw earlier there's a rain chain, and those rain chains really act to take that water from your rooftop and slow it down before it hits your landscape. One more way to just slow the water before it gets into the landscape and meanders through that swale before getting to the street. And that really helps our county. It helps our local ecosystems. It helps our local critters who just don't need that kind of pollution in their environment, particularly in our local creeks and beaches. And so that is the 10-minute version of our garden tour. I would invite everybody viewing today to visit our website and take a look at all these beautiful landscapes. There's at least 7 or 8 homes on the tour. So if you like a different style, you can see, some folks wanted, more floral design with boulders. We've got some folks that have really beautiful swales and different pathways and bridges and have really personalized their landscape. Here's a huge transition that we saw with one of our NatureScape programs. So anyways, I invite you to take a look at these. You're not going to find another place really, at least that I know of, that's got this many photos of native landscapes. And please reach out to our water efficiency department. If you have any questions, we'd be happy to talk you through the NatureScape program or any other programs that we offer to help you water more efficiently. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'll turn it over to Elena to wrap us up.
Thank you so much for that, Lindsay. I hope you guys enjoyed that little taster of the garden tour. We will be sending an email later today that has the link to the garden tour, so you can go through and explore on your own. We'll also have some handouts in there, like that plant this, not that list that Jody talked through, and some highlights from her other part of the presentation. I do want to just ask if you have any more questions, go ahead and pop those into the Q&A, and we'll bring Jody back on to ask her some questions. In the meantime, while you are putting those questions in, I want to know, where do you go to find nature? Do you go to the national parks? Do you go to their state park? Maybe it's already in your yard. Maybe you like to sit outside on your patio and enjoy the birds as they come to visit. So just a little teaser there. I'd love to find out what you'd like to do. Maybe you go to California Adventure Park at Disneyland, and that's as nature as you get. They do have beautiful parks there. I've had a tour of their landscaping. It's amazing. So go ahead and answer those. And we have a couple of Q&As, and I see Jody is back on.
I'm back. I've just been spending some time answering the questions that we already had in there. And I think there's one that we get in many classes, Elena, and that is, how do we deal with gophers? So I'm just going to answer that one out loud really quick, which is that many non-native garden plants do not have any strategies to beat out or repel or kind of put off our native gophers. But keep in mind that a lot of our native plants have been here for millennia dealing with our native gophers, and they have strategies. Some of them, like our sages, have strong fragrance that we may find beautiful, and we may love the smell of the sage, but the gophers don't. Some of them have sap that's a little bit bitter. Some of them have hairy leaves. Some of them, like the manzanitas, have hard leaves that the gophers just don't bite through. So there's lots of strategies that natives have. Right behind me in my background here, you can see this is a Salvia gregii, which is or autumn sage, sorry to get all botanical on you, is a beautiful sage that is very bloomy, but it has this sort of, it's a pleasant fragrance to us, but it's not pleasant to the creatures. So yeah, lots of strategies for gophers. That was a good question. Someone else is, do you want me to answer the questions live, Elena, or do you want me to answer them in the chat? Because we just had another come up about nutgrass, and that brings up weeds. I just want to say to people talking about, are wondering and thinking about the weeds that they have to remove in order to get a garden, or what happens when you plant a garden, what happens to the weeds. In our longer class, we actually talk about this at a little bit of length, because we don't use pesticides and herbicides to remove NatureScape, the turf in a NatureScape garden. And so we have to understand a little bit about weeds and how they work in order to get our weed, problem handled. Many of us in our lawns have weeds there. So how do we deal with that? We talk about that in our longer form class, how to deal and think about weeds. Someone just asked about nut sedge. That is a particularly nasty weed in our region, and we have some experience with that, so we can talk to you about it.
And we do have in the handouts that we'll be sending later today, we are including the one from the University Extension about nut sedge and some ways to help mitigate that.
Yeah, so keep in mind theirs does include heavy use of herbicides. So,
yeah,
there are always alternative strategies for everything. So for those of you who do not want to partake in the heavy use of herbicides, there are other ways to think about it. That is a tricky one, though. That requires management, but we could talk about that at the longer class if you had questions about it.
And we had a couple people ask about the ground covers that you would recommend for use in the parkways. So I know you talked about manzanita.
Yeah, that bunch of the manzanita are low growing. Some of the California lilacs are almost flat. plants grow, they don't grow in squares. So, you're always going to have to do a little bit of trimming up depending on how rigid your HOA is about that perfect line going down the sidewalk. But usually that is maybe a once or twice a year thing. It's not a frequent thing. But the manzanitas, the California lilacs, some of the small native sage bushes like the artemisias, are small and mounding and fit perfectly into that location. Some of the small grasses, our ground cover strawberry. We have quite a few actually that are great for some of our small flowering plants. There's a plant called the Damianita. It's a little kind of a dome of yellow. So some of the ground cover salvias, there's one called Dara's Choice. That's a low ground cover. So there's lots of things for parkways, whether it's a sunny parkway or a shady parkway.
Excellent. We had a question about trying to recognize which plants are native in the landscape that they have that they just acquired. So what's the good way to figure out what a plant is?
Well, I would say the best way is to take a picture of the plant, take a picture of the flowers, because if someone's going to identify a plant, they can most easily identify it by the flower, but it's got to be relatively close up. And you can either send that to a local nursery, or you can take a piece of the plant, just clip some off, take it to a local nursery, get somebody who knows what they're talking about. And what I would say, the best nursery locally who will be able to tell you right away if it's native or not is Tree of Life Nursery on Ortega Highway. They're all native plant specialists. You won't always find that at a retail nursery. Chances are, if you have just bought a house, it's not native. Sad, but true. Very, very few houses that I've seen in Orange County, and I've been going through these neighborhoods for now like a decade looking for them. Very few have them. So the other thing you can do is there's an app called Plant Snap. It is not perfect, but you can at least run it through Plant Snap, and it might be able to tell you if it's like a manzanita. It won't be able to tell you which one, and it's not perfect, so double check. But those are two ways you can do it.
Excellent. We had a question about liquid ambers. Are they good trees or bad trees?
I never qualify things as good or bad. I usually it's do they have value or not? So, and what are the pros and cons? Any large tree offers ecosystem services. Any large tree directs water into soil, holds water at its base, provides habitat or nesting, even if it has no food value, it's a nesting value for birds, provides shade and cools this urban heat island effect that we're finding in our region with more paved surfaces and more artificial turf, and all of that is raising the temperature and reducing our ambient moisture in the air. All trees increase ambient air moisture. But in the case of a liquid amber in particular, they've got nasty seeds that you do not want to step on in your bare feet. You'll be permanently disabled. They surface root like crazy, so they're space hogs. So if I was going to plant one, I would plant something else. If I had a choice to plant a tree, that would not be the tree I planted in this region. If you already have one, it's a big decision. It's an expensive thing to remove. If it could cause you problems. It very much is a surface rooter. So if it investigates, see if it is causing problems with your foundation or your municipal water lines, or, there's some issues with that particular tree. Certainly don't plant a new one, plant something else instead. Good question.
Good one. How about a plant that can block or kind of hide an unsightly wall, or maybe give protection from neighbors?
Oh, so many. So many. It depends on whether it's sun or shade. Morning sun, afternoon sun. It's really the quality of the sun that is probably the most important thing to think about. Meaning, if it's hot western sun against a wall, you need a plant that can withstand that kind of harsh environment. So you're more likely to put in a plant that has that kind of that heat tolerance. If it is a cooler sun, it's in dappled shade, it's north facing, it gets morning sun. Many plants. But I have to say, so there's a shrub forms of California lilacs. There's one called Ray Hartman. There's one called Snow Flurry. There's a few that can be trained to be a really nice 10-foot high screen. Our native California Bay, our native Pacific wax myrtle, fast growing screen. Pacific wax myrtle is probably one of the best, fastest growing screens. Also, our regionally native lemonade berry, people have trained them into hedges, you know, nice tall hedge. So yeah, there's absolutely, in the native plant palette, there truly is a plant for pretty much every functional purpose like that.
Yeah, I love the plant this, not that, like the plants that we have a purpose for, but choosing a California native that provides multiple benefits as a replacement. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
We do have some questions about our NatureScape program. First of all, I want to encourage you, we only have a few minutes left, and we love to talk this stuff during the week. So always feel free to reach out to the Water Efficiency Department. We can talk to you about NatureScape or participating in our regional turf removal program. If you are thinking about taking out your turf grass, it's really important that you contact us and apply for one of those programs before you take out your turf grass. So it's important that you have turf grass in place. We did have a question from someone that was asking if they wanted to change their fence, but they also want to participate in something like NatureScape. So should they do their fence first, or and then we also talk about, like, some people want to put in some hardscaping, and should they do that first before they do NatureScape?
Yes.
Do you want to talk about
yes
that,
and
Jody?
yes. So here's what I would say about the fence. The fence is an easy one. Yes, replace it before you do your NatureScape, because putting in a fence and drilling holes for the posts and all that, very, very disruptive of the landscape. It can compact the soil. A lot of times they'll leave bits of concrete from the footings all over the place. So yeah, get that all done, clean up the soil, make it nice and pristine again, and then put your garden in. And then related to hardscape, yes, put in your hardscape before your garden. Also, again, very disruptive, but I want you to think about, when you're doing your landscape, making it permeable. If you're looking for some sort of patio surface, every one of the paver companies now has a permeable version of their paver. It's like such a big thing now, they all have it. So put in permeable paving. Don't put in paving that sheets water off to the street, even if it's a driveway, even if it's a path, or you can do stepping stones. In order to infiltrate water through paving, you need only an inch or less. The engineered ones can have even less than half an inch, and they are engineered to infiltrate water. If you're doing it yourself with stepping stones, you need an inch and a half between them in order to infiltrate. If you want to plant in the gaps, like some of the pictures I showed you earlier, you need 3 to 4 inches between stepping stones to be able to plant between the stepping stones.
Excellent, good questions.
Yeah, great questions, everybody.
And a lot of people do want to, put in some type of outdoor area when they're doing NatureScape or the regular turf removal program. If you are looking to replace some of your grass area with hardscape, do talk to us before you do that, so that we can pre-qualify you for that. As long as what you put in is going to be permeable, then there's ways to work with the rebate program on that. If you're going to be paving an area, then that just would be taken out of your rebate areas that would qualify for the rebate. And our rebate right now is $2 per square foot, which really helps a lot with some of the costs for the plants and the mulch and pavers. All of that type of stuff would qualify for the rebate. So if you do have questions about that, like I said, give us a call, send us an email. Our email is conservation@mnwd.com. And our phone number is 949-448-4025. That's going to be on the email that I send you this afternoon. So look for that, and along with those handouts. And please, please, please fill out our survey. We'd love to hear from you, the feedback that you have about this workshop. This is our first Earth Day workshop. So I hope you all enjoyed that. And I really appreciate you coming out and spending some time with us this morning. Even in this virtual world, you have to talk to us in a box. We do hope to return to in-person workshops eventually, because we have so much more fun when we're in person, and we can kind of hang out and, like I said, enjoy some snacks and some coffee, and
do a little bit of show and
to
tell. I always bring my tools and my plants, and then we get to see things in real life.
Yeah, it's especially nice for people to actually see these plants up close. So that's always a treat. You can always go and check out Tree of Life Nursery. They're open during the week and on Saturdays. So you can go out there and kind of see some of these plants. They have a lot of them planted in their landscape, so you can see them growing. That's always good. And then next year, we do hope to actually have our NatureScape garden tour in person again. So
much
we had
fun.
so much fun with that in 2019. So we look forward to doing that. But again, thank you so much, Jody, for coming and spending some time with us and enlightening everyone about these sustainable gardens that are really regenerative, both for our area and for ourselves. Like you said, I think that's so important right now. We all need a little bit of regeneration after
I do.
zooming everywhere for a year.
Yeah. Thanks,
So,
everybody.
Thank you, everyone. And we'll talk to you soon. Have a great day.